Hello, welcome back to my channel. It's so fun saying my channel because I feel like this little corner of the world has kind of become more of my own and I'm getting more comfortable with it and I really enjoy it. But today I'm going to be giving you a pretty hefty list of some books that any dark academic in your life will love or you may love if you are the dark academic watching. One thing to mention is dark academics don't value quantity as much over quality. So they're not the type of people that read 200 books a year. They will savor a book. They will take their time with that book. They will reflect that book in their life and they will take notes and they will really meditate on it. So if you are the type of person that maybe only reads 1 or 2 books a year, that is okay. But here are a list of several books that I think you as a dark academic or any dark academic in your life will love. I'm sorry, I am a big reader and writer. I actually have several of my own books out. None of them are on this list, but maybe one day I'll put them on the list but not tell you which one is mine because they're under a pen name. Anyway, let's jump into it. So the first book is Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. I am sure you have heard of this. If you haven't read it, what are you doing? Essentially, we follow our main character, Alex, who has been through some stuff. And when she is invited into Yale on a full-ride scholarship, she feels like something is off. There is a catch. And so throughout this book, you get to experience the secret societies in Yale. And it just gives me so many like boarding school, Harry Potter vibes. I love the secret society aspect. Big fan. You're gonna love it. Now, the next thing, I'm sure every dark academic has either heard of this or read it, but it is the picture of Dorian Gray, and I literally just had to put it on here because of the beautiful cover I found. I love it. Okay, one thing with dark academics, they just want to read books and they just buy books and whatever, but personally, I love a pretty bookshelf, and when I saw this cover, I had to get it. Anyway, the picture of Dorian Gray. Follow Dorian Gray and his descent into madness, all surrounding a picture of himself. It's very short if you want to mark off a book read. This is extremely short, but it is pretty dense, and I think you'll like it. The next book is The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. So this is set inside of an old manor. We've got some, I don't know, 40s vibe. It is a mystery, a party, deceit, and it is super interesting. I will say it took me probably 3 chapters to get into it because we are in the mind of a character who is just confused. They walk out of the woods and something's not right. And it turns out that every time that they wake up or die, they are a different person. I don't want to give too much away, but nothing is what it seems, and you get to experience a giant manor and party and family wealth through several different characters, and it is very interesting. The next book that I have for you is Truly Devious by Maureen Johnson, and I'm sure you have read this or at least heard of it, but essentially here is an academy for very bright students and thinkers, and you can really do anything. It's a school that invites students who are really, really good or really, really smart in a niched subject. And so we follow one of our main characters who is a journalist, and she kind of investigates some happenings going on at this private boarding school in Vermont, and it is lovely, which is why I put this next one on there. It is a series. There are 3 books in it, and if you wanted to get the box set, this is the best price. It is extremely interesting. I will say The Vanishing Stair is excellent. It still does kind of fall into that like second book slump, but I was entertained the whole way, and I think that you will be too. Now, I was going to put this book on here, and I actually had it on here because I read it, but I just now discovered that the paperback is no longer available. So R.C. Walden probably unpublished it, and I think he probably did that because it was his first book, and it kind of read like his first book, but I think he might be re-editing it or just trunking it, I don't know. So it's on here in case it ever comes back. But my biggest complaint with the book was it was too serious. You know those like 22-year-olds that are trying to act like 62? It kind of read like that in a way. Like it was too self-important important almost. Like, it took itself a little too seriously. However, I found so many nuggets of wisdom, and I just genuinely enjoy reading self-published books. So I was into it. If it comes back, I would give it a try and just read it through the lens of this is a guy's first attempt at writing a book, and it was pretty good. The next book I have is The Once and Future King. I put the hardcover on here because I think it is absolutely beautiful, and I just really love this yellow. Hello, that's my channel's theme, whatever. But I read this book in middle school, and I reread it pretty much every other year because it is amazing. I love a King Arthur story. This is one of the original like fantasies out there. It's a 3-book series. The first one, definitely the best. If you don't read the second 2 books in the series, honestly, it's fine, but read the first one. It's very interesting. I love the dynamic, and it just, such a classic book, and I think a lot of people will enjoy it. Again, if you start reading the second book in the series, because it is 3 books in one, and you don't like the second book, it's just gonna go downhill from there. I think the first book is excellent. The next 2 books are just meh. Now, the next book in the series, which is actually a trilogy, it is The Magicians. So this is essentially like the original Harry Potter. I know nothing will replace Harry Potter, but this book is like god tier levels above Harry Potter, but you get the camaraderie, you get the sense of awe and new world all in this book. I don't want to give too much away, but it has a lot of praise from a lot of big name authors, and it is well worth it. You will love this. And it's just genuinely interesting. All right, so this book is a little bit heavier. It is a separate piece by John Knowles. So you're at a boarding school in New England, and it's just at the start of World War II. And you follow a few characters as they kind of go through this tragedy and this sense of unknown together. And so it's a definite coming of age story, but man, it packs a punch. It is not super long, but it just is so dense. And we get a lot of themes of growing up, coming of age, innocence, and the loss of innocence. And it's heavy, but it's good. And I think one of the reasons why it fits in this whole dark academic vibe is because there are so many lessons just folded in between the lines that you really need to sit and meditate on. It's definitely one of those books that you will be thinking about years after you read it. And the next book I have is The Secret History. I think a lot of people have either read this or heard of this. This is probably one of the most recommended dark academic books. But again, we are back in New England at a college, and we are learning how to think differently, and we really talk about a lot of the themes of existence, and it's very interesting because we have this push and pull of morality, what it means to be moral, what is morality, and we have some murder, and it's just great. I think everyone who recommends it is absolutely right. This definitely fits in with any dark academic vibe. I have the paperback, but I am definitely on the hunt for like a really interesting hard copy because it's one of those books that I will reread. So I really want a really cute book. And I've talked about this before, Don Quixote. We love him. It's a big book. It is a very big book. This took me about a year to read, and I probably read about 10 pages every other night or so, but we follow Don and his quest for chivalry, and he just becomes a knight. I don't like to read the descriptions because you can do that yourself, but this line right here just kind of sums it up. It's a sane madman and a wise fool, and they roam the world together. That's about it. It is a lot of wandering, but I think each little episodic piece has a really interesting lesson, and I think it's just one of those books that you read once and you're like, I made it through. And then as the years go on, you kind of learn to appreciate it a little bit more. The next book I have is Arthurian Romances, and it's a Penguins classic. The hardcover, I have no idea why it is $700. I do have the paperback. These are just a lot of fun. I have no idea how to pronounce this name, but it is just the legends around King Arthur in these little short stories. And I think that these are very fun because, again, I personally really love anything King Arthur. I just think it's a very interesting piece of history, not necessarily the story itself, but how the story came about. do a little bit of research on that and you'll find it very interesting. King Arthur was only mentioned once in one random piece of history, and this whole crazy legend was born because of it. So I just find that piece really interesting, and so I've been enjoying consuming anything King Arthur just to see how different they are and then where they intersect. It's just a very interesting piece of oral history and written history that has surpassed generations, and I think it's just a very interesting concept. All right, the next book, The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse. This is a fairly short story, but it is beautiful, and this is full of illustrations, and I think that they are absolutely gorgeous, and they add so much to this beautiful little story. Like, look at that. Look at that. It is absolutely gorgeous. Essentially, it's a whole bunch of little stories and snippets about these characters, the boy, the mole, the fox, and the horse, as they go through uncertain times, as they learn, as they grow, and it's just these beautiful little pieces of dialogue that just really stick with the readers for years to come. You are going to find so many quotable things in it, and it's just absolutely beautiful. Again, it's really short, so if you really want to say, I read 50 books this year, this one will take you an afternoon, but I highly recommend you spend your time on it. Reread it, highlight, note take, annotate. It's beautiful. And the next thing that I have is the Price Guide to the Occult. This is more dark academic, but like YA fun, whereas what we just looked at is very hard-hitting, real-life, emotional. This is just ridiculous and fun. This is definitely YA. I might even err on the side of middle grade. I think that the cover is really interesting if you just want to have a cover by, but essentially it's a pretty short book, and we follow a family of witches and their life on a small little island. It's very atmospheric. You can probably finish this in a weekend. It is not very long, but if you are interested in witches and growing up and family curses, this is for you. All right, so the next book I have is The Club du Mans, and I think that this is pretty interesting, even though it's more of a slow read. We start out with a very interesting concept. We have this secret kind of hidden club / world of books. We see people trying to get their hands on some very priceless books, and then this descent into madness and murder trying to get their hands on a book. We talk about some devil worship, some occult practices. We have some very atmospheric sword fighting, and it's just very interesting. But I think it started out really strong and it was pretty slow, and then it ended really strong. But it's definitely one of those books that if you want some atmospheric pieces into your life, this is it. All right, let's take a break from books for a second, and here is a notebook that I think is really cute. It's a little expensive, it's $16, but it's super great quality. I think it's beautiful. I love this map, and it just goes with like that earth tone color scheme that a lot of dark academics have going. It's the perfect size, it's beautiful, it's great quality, so I just kind of wanted to throw that in there, that here's another book that you might enjoy, even though it's not actually a book to read. Write your own stories in it. So the next book I have is kind of interesting. I don't think people would expect dark academia and comics to go together, but I think one thing about dark academia is that we really enjoy the visual component. Like, this cover says more than any words can. It's beautiful, it's gorgeous, it's seductive. And so I think it's important to allow everyone who may not be able to read really well, who struggle with reading, dyslexia, whatever is going on, to still have these books that bring out that dark academia in people. And I think The Umbrella Academy is an amazing story, and the way it is told visually through these comics is incredible. So I think a lot of people have seen the Netflix show, but there's something about the original story concept being told in a visual way that just adds so much more than any Netflix series or show can. So I just wanted to put these on there for those who are not super into reading but want to get more into it. Graphic novels and comic books are an excellent gateway drug into the literary world. The next story I have is The Monkey's Paw. This is a short story. Again, if you really want to like rack up the books you read in a year, this is one of them. It's very short, but it packs a punch. We talk about morality, and we talk about it in a way that is creepy and unsettling, and it leaves you just with a shiver, and it makes you think for a long, long time. This is one of the best short stories I have read. I think you will really, really enjoy it. And the next book I have is the complete poems of Sappho. She is our lesbian queen and we love her. So what's interesting about these is they were translated a couple of different ways. Sometimes they take the words very literally and translate the words and fragments, and it's kind of hard to get through, but it's a really interesting perspective because you get the literal words that Sappho was saying. And then we get some other translators that take the liberty of adding in the metaphorical components and the imagery as well. So one reason why I like this copy is because we get a lot of notes about the translation while we read it, so we can get the full context of it if you really, really want to dig in deep. But these poems are beautiful. If you don't know anything about Sappho, I think you should do a little bit of research on her. One of these days, I'm gonna get a bust because I love her dearly. And the next book I have is Poems from the River, the Classroom, and Other Sacred Places. Personally, I am trying to get more into poetry, and I love indie books. I think one of the best things that you can do to support authors is to buy independent books, which is why I have a couple of indie books on here. But this is a collection of poetry that you can, again, probably read in a day. So if you really want to mark off more books read in a year, this is also another one of them. But these are poignant little stories. It's almost like flash fiction. Each poem is a story in itself. It's understandable, but the imagery and the extended metaphors throughout each poem just leaves the reader just kind of sitting and like breathing and needing a moment before they can move on to the next poem. This is probably something that might take you a few days to get through because each poem is just so powerful in its own right. The author is, I think, a teacher, and so he has a lot of interesting perspectives from his students, and I just think that it's a really great read for any poetry reader or anyone trying to get in poetry, because these are very easy to understand, but they have so much more depth than what the words on the page are saying. I think if you are new to poetry, this is one of the best books that you can start with. And that's it. I had a lot of books, I know it, and I had a lot more that I didn't end up putting on here, so I fully suspect a future book list. I also am really passionate about supporting independently published books because I think as dark academics, we can really appreciate art in a way that a lot of people don't, and I do think that literary art can sometimes be swept under the rug because of the big five publishers due to their big names and advertising. And so in the future, I'm planning on creating a list of just independently published books for the dark academic reader. And if you have any questions, comments, or just want to talk about books in the comments, please do. I love talking anything literary, and I really appreciate you guys being here. Thanks for watching. Okay, bye.